Welcome to the Thunderstock Show, a collection of valuable brainstorms to enhance your life, liberty, and pursuit of property. Today's guest is Paul Schiffbauer of Schiffbauer Consulting Group, based out of York, PA. Love having a fellow nicotine connoisseur and fellow
Gotta love a
marketing
Nick.
consulting expert. So, without further ado, Paul, can you tell everyone how'd you get here? A little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. Well, Ross, thank you for having me on today. I know we've been connected for a little bit now, but more than anything, it's great just to hop on your show. Your question was it's just in terms of how things got started, right? Or just a
Yeah,
little bit about
give us
us.
the origin story.
Oh, the origin story. So it was a cold night in January 1994. I was born. All right, we'll skip all those
Happy
ancillary
birthday.
details. Thank you. I'm an Aquarius. Sometimes I tell women I'm a Scorpio just to see what head games can come about.
You're not married yet, right?
Nope, I am a bachelor.
Then I support your decisions.
Thank you.
No
A
judgment
bachelor
here.
by choice. But yeah, my father had a bar grill. Essentially, majority of my upbringing, I like to say, like hanging at his bar as a kid, and eventually working for him was kind of like a second home.
Hmm.
It's this little neighborhood tavern in North Baltimore. Sold it back in 2016, but I learned a lot about business and entrepreneurship and really getting my first dabble into marketing with his business. That kind of came to fruition where Facebook started becoming an emerging platform. And, my dad at the time, he's probably back then, mid to late 30s. He's like, I don't know any of this shit. Apparently, customers that come in and asking about Facebook, what do you do? Well, I got a Facebook account. I know a little bit about posting. I'll do some research and we'll figure it out.
Okay, so you kind of cut your teeth doing Facebook for him.
Yeah, oh yeah, just real basic, content creation management. Started with him, and then over the course of like my early years in college, had a couple of side clients, like real freelance base,
Hmm.
and they naturally at the time similar scope. Looking back on it, small restaurants in the Southern York County area, which I like lived and grew up in.
Yeah. Hey, start where you know, right? I uh
Exactly.
I did a similar thing right out of college. I did a little bit of odd jobs in college, all sorts of things. But when I graduated, my father had he was in like the construction and real estate industry,
Okay.
and this was before Facebook ads was even on my radar. This is kind of dating myself, 2013. But SEO was like the new buzzword, so kind of built him a WordPress site, ranked it, and was like, wow, I can make a big impact to your business while I do it for other people.
Hmm.
So I can relate to your coming to business story.
Yeah, it was just kind of came natural, this, having a personal touch on it. And I just found it very fascinating how you can get people's attention
Hmm.
through those channels early on, looking back on it. Um, Fast forward a little bit, went to York College, Pennsylvania. I got connected, or I actually reached out rather, with a proposition to a local photographer at the time who was fairly successful independently that I went to high school with. And I'm like, hey, why don't we take your work and like really market it? And he's like, what? I'm like, well, you take great work of like landscapes and cityscapes. Dude, what if we build like a brand around it that's bigger than just, you as like an
A
Instagram photographer?
portfolio. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Um, so it was really cool. Was essentially like a side project while I was still in college. And
Hmm.
then getting out of it, still working with my dad a little bit, but we were able to escalate the startup at the time, No Art Gallery, which was essentially an e-commerce store when it was live for a number of
Hmm.
years. Um, they since ceased operations last year, but that's all good, ebbs and flows.
Yeah, of course.
But essentially taken an Instagram photographer's work and built a online retail brand around it where we essentially got contracts with Home Depot, Overstock, Wayfair. Coming out of college for us and everyone listening out there, I was shaking having meetings as a fucking 23-year-old with like
Oh man.
C-suite guys at like homedepot.com. Like
What'd you go to school for? What while you were in college?
business admin, so marketing management concentration. So like
Hmm.
in theory, you're getting the reps.
But
And
you
like I'm
went from graduation to the big leagues in a matter of a couple months.
yeah, like when you
Mhm.
hear when it was so funny, Ross, going back to like we did a couple trade shows. We got that contractor our first trade show that we showed at in High Point, North Carolina. It's a home
Mhm.
furnishings and accessories show. It's like the furniture capital of the world for those who don't know too much about like home furnishings out there. But with that, it was so fucking funny in hindsight, where like these older guys, like they thought we were cool, like me, John, who I worked with, and this other gentleman, Jason, at the time. Like, oh yeah, you guys are young. You guys are in your 30s, right? And we're all like early 20s. I think John was like maybe not even 21 at the time.
Yeah.
Like us doing this. Like they already thought we were like 5, 10 years like older than we actually were getting these
Mhm.
contracts, which was hilarious in hindsight.
So how do you think that those contracts come about? You just grew the brand, grew the recognition. Someone at those companies took notice and reached out, or did you guys do an outreach to them? How'd that kind of shake out?
So how it kind of worked out was the one gentleman, Jason, who we all worked together at the time. We're at this trade show, three guys, and selling home decor. And which was like we didn't look like three guys selling home decor. Like we had like the stereotypical like Instagram photographer with the Justin Bieber haircut, but it's just like we look out of place in hindsight.
Mhm.
So he's at lunch, Jason, and he's talking to this guy. What's his name? I think it was Ed. Ed, yeah, of like the Gershman group. And like he just like looked at this guy. He's like, this is some guy like I need to talk it up over like ciabatta like sandwiches. It was like something like some funny line, and then, like you mentioned like why he was here, and this guy Ed came back to like the booth, and he's like, I really like this work. There's something I could do with it. I'm with the Gershman Group, and we're essentially a rep where we take like independent brands and like get you contracts, and like we pitch you to like these big box retailers, and we're like, what?
No way. So Ciabatta's is where it started.
Yeah. So shout out to ciabatta bread enthusiasts out there. But it was kind of like dumb luck, a little networking on Jason's part. But mind you, we weren't guaranteed these contracts. We still had to go through a pitching process. We worked with
Mhm.
this agency that essentially helped soup us up, but we had a good enough product that was attractive for the retailers at the time from an online standpoint, solid enough pricing where it looked attractive, where we got these agreements.
Mhm.
So that was a really cool experience where I was essentially director of ops running that business, essentially wearing 10 hats. And it's
Yeah.
really ironic, Ross.
Flying by the seat of your pants, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
almost every day. So in hindsight, I got bought out around this time, like 6 years ago. One of the biggest challenges was how do we market like mass at scale other than like our current level of expertise? We were
Mhm.
interviewing agencies like outside this rep, which was more like a sales rep agency that was helping us with these contracts.
Mhm.
um, Big agencies where they're saying like it's like $10,000 $20,000 investment for SEO and this kind of e-commerce development. Where like I knew some skills, but I was still like 101, 102 coming out of college,
Yeah, sure.
realistically. So it's just like, oh, this is our challenge. Like, how do we break out and like market and position the brand better than we are right now, for to continue to grow sales? And then I got bought out. It just had a difference of vision with my former business partner. And I look at it 6 years now removed. My primary contractor, who I'm partnered up with a consulting group, we've been working out of the 6 years together.
Mhm.
We essentially, with him and then like us collectively with our experience, we had the capabilities of like the agencies I was interviewing with like 6 years ago.
I know,
Ross,
dude.
it's so
Isn't it
funny.
wild how
Like,
that happens? Like
yeah,
I so I started brand side. So after I, found that freelancing moments of success, took that as a portfolio to get like a job. I thought I needed a job.
yeah,
I was like, I can't be a solopreneur. I can't be one of these guys. I need
mhm,
a job to really learn business, which was, at the time I felt like that was the truest thing ever. And then I started getting the in-house brand for home decor. So more gardening.
okay,
And
nice.
I learned pretty quickly that I was like the subject matter expert with my very limited, what I thought was such a low level of expertise. Everyone else is like, "Oh, you're the whiz on the internet," and I'm like, "What the fuck?" And then, long story short, got into the agency world and also realized that yeah, there are people that know how to do tasks in agencies, but they're just trying to figure out like everybody else to stay ahead of the curve too. And so that imposter syndrome that were kind of almost imposters, if I could say, where, oh, we need to, hire agencies and they know so much. The veil gets lifted real quick once you really deep dive all the time into marketing, in my experience.
It's funny, Ross. I really developed this personal philosophy and belief over the past year, like doing this full time as consulting practice now. Um, a black pill in business is people know a lot less than you think they do.
Mm-hmm.
And when you meet owners of like 5, 10, 15, $20 million companies, sometimes you have conversations with them where they might be lacking in an area and it makes you think, how the fuck did you even grow this to $10 million in the first place
Oh yeah,
with how you're running your business right now?
yeah.
It's a black pill.
And I don't necessarily. Can you define what you mean by black pill?
It's funny where you think everything. Well, I say it's a black pill from the standpoint where it's a scenario where you think it's the opposite, where you're like, oh, this person's running a $10 million company. They got all their shit together.
They
No,
have it
they
all
don't.
figured out. Yeah, no, they don't.
No. It's just like
Yeah,
they're almost like drunk driving out there, some of these business owners. And they're not that they're intentionally doing it. I use that analogy kind of like sounds crazy me saying it, but it's just how are you operating? It's just like you're going left and right, swerving, hitting guardrails. Like you're still going to where you want to go, or you might be going slower, but it's just like, what's going on? You're like a drunk driver out there navigating your
yeah.
business, man.
No, I think the point you made about people knowing a lot less than you think you do, it's like everyone puts their pants on one leg at a time.
Yep.
Everyone has to wake up in the morning, brush their teeth, go to the bathroom, just like you. People are incredibly human up close. And then you just see the kind of the consequences of that compound interest of letting time take its time. And maybe they're really good at product. Like maybe their
Mhm.
product is so great, or their customer service is so great, but then they need people's help with the marketing and the messaging, the positioning and the ads. And like no one person can be competent at everything, I found.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that sentiment. Um, question for you. This kind of want to open up a
Yeah.
dialogue. What is your view on patience with clients? Like serving them, like when it comes to, you know, let's say you get a objection from a particular client. It doesn't really make sense from a grounded logic standpoint. Like, how have you adapted like patience in your business? Because I think that's a very valuable skill to like hone in on.
I think if I'm going to define patience as being okay with the gap between stimulus and response that I want, I just I look at it like in line with toughness. So it's like in the beginning, I would in the very beginning of my career, I would kind of roll over and be like, okay, they know something that I don't know.
Yeah.
Like maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm missing something, and I would back down, and then time would go on. I'm like, man, this is just actually more of an authority thing
Uh-huh.
than it is like I was logically incorrect. So in the beginning, it was more of like was too soft. And then later, when I started getting the confidence, I would go too hard and have very little patience. And if they didn't adopt my ideas soon enough, I would kind of be blunt and forceful and
Okay.
push my ideas later. And then now it's more of like the Goldilocks. It's like, all right, you know, what I found is just right for patients is like clarification to the extreme and making sure that I'm very clear in how I communicate and making sure that I clearly understand what they're trying to communicate. And if those things happen, like the only result is we get to the end result,
Okay.
the response we want. Because at the end of the day, like my whole job is not to is not to catch the fish for you. My job is to make sure that like you feel confident enough that you know where the fish are, you know how to set your hook, you know how to do the whole process and reel them in. Um, and if you don't feel confident enough, then I need to speak some confidence into you and be patient from that sense. And if if you don't want to listen to me, then it's like I can only suggest, but I have to give you time to learn for yourself because everyone learns at different times. And Paul, honestly, the best thing for patience for me ever was the process of starting a family and having a kid
Really? Okay.
because you're just like, oh, you're a blank slate. I know you don't know anything, but now my daughter, who's a year and a half, has the attitude of a teenager, and she thinks crayons are edible. And sometimes it's sticking with it. What about
Mm.
you? Tell me about how patience plays into your consulting.
I thank you for your take on that. I was just curious as one service provider to another. I just wanted to kind of open the door. I was just curious what your thoughts on it. But I definitely agree with you with that. It's just having that like duality, like that balance where not being like the enforcer, but being Goldilocks in a way, a little step back, almost like Buddha Zen. It's just like let some things play out when like they're ready.
Heat it up or cool it down, depending on where we need it to be.
Yeah, I think the only comment I'll add to that because I definitely agree with your sentiment on that, Ross. Um, is sometimes too when you get something from a client where it might be off base, where like like the work's great, the deliverable's solid. Where's this critique coming from? And let them just
Mm.
process whatever's going on to then give you that that feedback then, even if it's like at another point in time.
I think back to your original point with the black pill, when people sometimes my clients know so much about their area of expertise, like they might know so much about home good furnishing and like the
Mhm,
materials and the cost and the origins, or they might know so much about, like, let's just say whatever it is that they do, paint. Oh, well, this color is actually really popular and this and that. But it's like, listen, your my clients' customers do not know nearly what you know, nor do they care.
mhm,
So, like, I need to remind my clients that people know a lot less than you think they do. You need to. I use the analogy of like the ladder of knowledge. If my
mhm,
client, like, there's 10 rungs, right? If my clients are the top where they're field experts and they know so much, they could have PhDs and whatever it is they do. And I try to learn up to be like a 3 or a 4 where I can have a conversation. My goal is to take what you know up here and bring it down to ladder 1.
okay, yeah, it's good.
Like, if people knew what you knew, they wouldn't be trying to hire you.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. It's just like if the solution was that easy and I had the expertise readily available to me, we wouldn't be having this conversation or wouldn't be buying your product or service.
Mm-hmm. So, um, no, that's great dialogue on at least that part of client service business. I want to sort of go gears, and you got bought out in 2018, correct?
2016. Well,
2016.
actually, no, 2018. Yeah, your math's right. It's been a long week.
It's all good.
6 years.
Happy Friday. Um, and since that, you then started Schiffbauer Consulting Group. You're bringing opportunities to small business owners. Do you focus on Central PA and Baltimore County? Are you like a hyper localized marketer?
Hyper local.
Hyper local?
And that's by design. We have full remote capabilities.
Hmm.
My lead advertiser, who is uh, the heavy on the majority of our projects, he lives in Phoenix, Arizona. He's
Yeah,
been to this marketplace twice. He knows the lay of the land. When it comes to directing strategy, that's communicated to him. But I have found even like larger small businesses, they've worked with other agencies before that are not local, and local is an attractive commodity for them. For
right.
some reason, it's like something intrinsic where there's a little more trust and consideration brought in with having someone like in your backyard, like myself or yourself, if you're working with someone local on your end. I have found those conversations that like it might not be the reason why they ultimately buy, but it sure does help.
And their customers are usually local to them. Is that correct?
Correct. So
So
that's
not
a
only do you understand them as business owners, but you understand the market better.
correct. That's I personally I view the number one rule of marketing is knowing your market, Ross. So it's like knowing who else is in your space when it comes to clients you serve, knowing about your client, their customers, their competitors, keeping an eye on them, not doing everything that they're doing, but it is how to best position.
Yeah, being aware of where you stand.
Yep.
So with that local marketing is so huge because to go from the marketing agency standpoint to the the in-house marketing team and whether you go remote or whatever. I think what a lot of small businesses find is they might try and get that New York City, like Philadelphia, LA
Mhm.
marketing agency because they think that these major metros have the stranglehold on the best talent. But what they're not really understanding is the global marketing agencies charge global marketing agency rates, which do not necessarily have a higher impact on you getting better results. Like, and also, if you're the smallest fish client on their radar, they can give you the least amount of attention and care and
Regardless of what they
resources.
say, it's
Right, because
how the
they're gonna hand
pie's
it
gonna be
off
out.
from their SDR, and the SDR is gonna hand it off to their BDR. BDR is gonna go to AE. AE is gonna go to your account management, customer success. Customer success has to talk to all these different people. It's like you're in the pipeline. You're in a small fish in a big pond. But what you want to be, customer, I'm just labeling your customers, is you want to be positioned as the big fish in your pond in your backyard.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm totally okay with that. I literally
I love
thought
that.
when I was in the process of getting bought out, I interviewed with a couple agencies locally. I'm like, oh, there's opportunities in Baltimore for me to work for one. Maybe I moved to Philadelphia. And then something intrinsic with me, like I took a couple interviews and I'm like, my gut was like sour. I'm like, why not fucking serve the people locally in your backyard?
Yeah, you have this competitive advantage. You don't want to, switch out your competitive advantage and try and find a new one. Like if
Mhm.
the one you have right now is effective, I think that's huge in terms of self awareness, especially at that age where you're like, hey, I know where I'm good at. I know who I serve really well. That's a large part of the battle in marketing.
Yeah.
It's the brand identity.
And then in hindsight too, it's this. I feel like a lot of us, especially in our youth, we get caught up on there's aspiration, and it's at all time high. When you're leaving adolescence into early adulthood, where you want
Hmm.
to aspire to be that person you want to be, even if it's years out. You want to go to the big city or the big school.
Sure.
I consciously made a decision back then, looking back on it, where like, no, I'm going to stay here. Could I, provide a lot of value and work my way up a totem pole for somebody at a large agency? Yeah, probably. But
Sure.
no, no, I'm,
Was that what
I'm,
you
I'm
want to do?
no,
Could you? Yes. Do you want to do that?
nope.
Nope. So let me ask you then, you've been growing, you're consulting for the last 6 years in these markets. You've got plenty of happy customers. You got the client results. I love one of the things in your own sales process, which is, hey, book a time for dinner. We're gonna have steaks. You offer the cigar. So you offer that high touch personal relationship in part of your sales process. How do you communicate? Like, first of all, how has that evolved, and how did you get to that system and process for sales for yourself? And then how do you transfer that to serving your clients?
That's a great question, man. It's definitely evolved organically. I must say that it was not something I figured out day one. I think I was day one, I was always willing to meet someone kind of like at least 50-50. Even a little more so where like I would overextend myself, meeting up in person or neutral ground, especially we're meeting with folks where they may have worked with an agency or they're especially with me starting off, they had no agency experience where they're spending money on marketing or just starting to, but like, well, what is that? It's so foreign to me.
Hmm.
Or it's like you got to meet them all at their level. Where like the personal touch was there from day one,
Yeah,
and
for
it
sure.
still is. But as like I grew individually and as the business grew, I'm like, all right, things are changing, and the steak nights. One personally, something I just liked. It was like it's $12.95 steak special with fries every Monday night at White Rose downtown. They don't pay me to say that, but I'm saying it. Um, I would just go independently or with like friends, but it came a point where this is where it became a thing. It was one of those like bandwidth growing points where like I was pretty like tight, where like when I would used to go out of my way to meet someone like on their field,
Didn't have the
I'm
time.
I'm like, dude, I remember telling this guy Jason, I'm like, dude, I'm going to White Rose Monday night. Come join me if you want to join me. He's like, sure. So I'm like, all
That was
right.
the first time, the aha moment.
I'm on to something here. And even John, who is my long-term contractor I work with, he's like, dude, you got to do something with the steaks. Get more steaks. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, lean into it.
Dude, that's awesome. It's so organic. Like people that try to ideate in a boardroom with these fluorescent lights and wearing their suits, like, how do we come up with a way to reach our target market? And you're just like, hey, I'm at the steakhouse, like you can come. The opposite of that big city marketing exec, but like it works for you because it is you.
Yeah, no,
You're not faking shit.
no, it's something I would do by myself, and I did.
Yeah.
And it really like I really like made it a calendar thing, like on my calendar when like I was literally getting messages on Facebook. This guy Corey, I know the nonprofit world, was like, "Hey Paul, I don't know when to get together, but maybe we can do one of your steak nights." And I'm like,
You know where I'm at.
people are branding it before I'm even branding it.
Dude, that's sick.
So now I'm just like, I throw it out there. I tell folks too, it's just like, if you just want to network, like, and it really is, it's become like the best night of the week for me. Like, middle of the week, Tuesday through Thursday, I might be out at like different like networking events that might be
Sure.
going on.
Yeah.
Monday is really nothing
It's
going
that
on.
constant. It's that constant.
It's constant. Monday night, it's something, it started off as like a ritual for me to go out and get a steak by myself, something I look forward to. And now there's something other people look forward to when like we get together, either the first time or maybe even the third or fourth time, if like the relationship's there.
So, first of all, I want to make an analogy. When I was in the cage fighting industry, um, 9 out of 10 of the guys that were in that world trying to make it to the UFC had full time 9 to 5 type day jobs, right? So not only that, but they're trying to get to the gym and they're trying to, cut the weight and diet and do all the right
Yeah.
things in order to chase the dream of the UFC. But what they didn't have was the time to go in like a pizza delivery guy and people they want to sell a ticket for their fight because that's how they get paid. In the
Yeah.
amateur level, you get paid commission off your ticket sales. They some people would get in and meet everyone else and drop off and go and meet up in parking lots and do deliveries. The guys who did the best were like, hey, I'm going to be at this place at this time. I go to the gym every night, from this hour to this hour. Pop in if you can. Otherwise, because at the time there was no online ticket sales, it was all
Yeah.
in person cash. So to your point, you did the same thing where you're like, hey, if you want what I got
Pull
it
up.
right here, right now. Pull up.
Yeah. And it's fun. It's something I go almost every week, even if just by myself.
So that's been a part of the current design, the current brand. There's other things about your brand that I kind of resonate with and I think are really not only high level like intelligent from a branding standpoint, but like cool to relate to you on. Like you do the cigar thing, whether that's in podcasts like we're doing right now, or you do that in social media pictures, whatever. Like, hey, I like to
I
drink
do.
bourbon and drink whiskey cigars. Like, cool. I'm like I resonate with that. It works for me. And for some people that don't like cigars who are anti-tobacco, you're like, hey, we might not be a good fit. So my question for you, Paul, other than that observation is what are you going to do in 2024 to push the limits of your current brand and keep evolving and keep growing? Like, tell me about the future and the plans for growth.
That's a great question, Ross. I told my long-term contractor John just the other night. I was like paraphrasing a Benny the Butcher rap lyric, where this last year's about branding, this year's about expanding. This year, though, branding to really set things up for growth, where we'll see a huge surplus of growth next year. And what I mean by branding is doing more of this. You and I talking right now, having more conversations, more steak dinners with people, going to more networking events, me doing more cold outreach just to tell people this is who I am. How can I help you?
Mhm.
And in the event you do have a marketing desire or need, this is how we help grow people like you if it's like a direct fit. It's old school, but it's just like, it almost feels like a political campaign for myself personally in the business.
Yeah, in a way. I never actually had that thought before of doing personal branding as politics, but you're not wrong, right? Like
Mm-mm.
you're trying to serve the community, and most politics starts, whether it's your school board at the smallest level or your, district judge or, wherever the polling booth is, you're doing those local grassroots campaigns. Now you're still doing it in new ways. You
Eh,
still do the social media. You're not like putting out things in the newspaper necessarily, unless you are. I don't know, but
No, I toyed around the idea of a billboard, but that would be something very me if I would do it.
yeah, that's still on brand for you, right?
Mhm.
Billboard.
Oh, it would be fun.
Yeah. So it's just the idea is you're going to be just pushing yourself to see how much more of those old school tactics you can do with that new world mindset point of view. It's just combining what's worked forever and what's working for you and your clients now.
Double
Yeah.
down on it. And then I don't really see true expansion until next year, but we're going to grow. But like in terms of like working with more contractors, like thinking more from a logistical operational standpoint, that will come in 12 to 18 months as a side effect of what's occurring this year.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I see what you're saying. Now, for let's just talk about I'm in Lebanon County. So
Mhm.
I grew up in Lancaster County.
I like
We
Lancaster.
Yeah, so there's like Lancaster, Lebanon is like usually tied together, and then there's like Route 30 and the bridge that connects York
Mhm.
and Lancaster. They're usually tied together. Lancaster is right next to Berks, sometimes Westchester too, and then Lebanon's connected to Dolphin and Berks,
Yeah, the Harrisburg corridor.
the Harrisburg corridor. But it's like these main roads. Do you see you growing into the Lancaster and Harrisburg market more? Do you see you getting more and more of the market share of the York County? Like, how does it do you when I say expand your pond of clients, do you grow the size of the pond or do you grow the criteria of the fish?
That's a great question. A little bit of both. I think more the criteria of fish, there's more work that can be done in this marketplace to better serve folks. We have nowhere near hit the market cap, I
Love
feel
to
like,
hear that, dude.
of what we can do just in and around your county. Um, but ideally too, like I'm gonna do more events in Lancaster and do more networking in Baltimore where there's secondary markets of interest,
Yeah.
but it's not gonna be like the end goal,
Sure,
Like
for
I'm
sure.
opening up in a new market.
Because let's just face it, tons of other people from York are also going to there too.
100%. So it's just
Yeah.
like it's doubling down on what has gotten me and Schiffbauer Consulting Group as a whole to this point. And then there's always been side effects of us growing relationships, partnerships, and connections in these secondary areas, Harrisburg, Lancaster, Baltimore.
It's so funny, growing up in Lancaster and Lidditz, I always kind of thought that it was this like insulated small area. But then the older I got, the more I'm like, well, I know this person commutes to Philadelphia every day by the train, or I know this person travels 6 months out of the year all over the country. So it is connected, but like you do home services and you're like, yeah, a lot of these professionals do work in these other areas, but we're doing home services. So like, where's your home at? And I think, and I don't know as much about real estate in York, but Lebanon is exploding when it comes to commercial growth and
That's
investment.
what I'm hearing.
Lancaster has been for years with new development and new industries coming in. I'm sure York is getting something like that too, right?
Yeah, they're having a nice side effect. Northern York County, a lot of manufacturing and commercials projects are popping up left and right.
Yeah, it's a great place to be as far as where we are in the map in the country. Um, I love how when I talk to people out of state, it's usually like, "Oh, are you by Philly or are you by Pittsburgh?" I'm like, "There's a lot more to Pennsylvania than just Philly and Pittsburgh."
Yeah, it was. I always got that when we went down to the trade shows because we would say, depending on the individual, either Baltimore area or like South Central PA. But when we say Baltimore, people think The Wire on HBO.
Right.
And when people think Pennsylvania, like near Philly, I'm like, well, I'm not slighting Pennsylvania or this area when I say this, everyone. Like I say, like Pennsylvania, it's kind of like you have the area where like York, Lancaster, it's like a greater Baltimore kind of like metro, like sub area.
York, definitely.
York, 100%.
York loves the Ravens. It's really weird. Like, you'll see Steelers in Lebanon all day, every day, like huge Steelers and Eagles. Lancaster's more Eagles than Steelers, and York's like Ravens.
And I would tell folks though, you got these little pockets by us here, and then you got Philly, Pittsburgh, and then it's kind of Alabama filling out the rest of Pennsylvania in between.
Pennsylvania.
Yeah, Pennsylvania. Like I told people, it's a real thing if you drive across the state.
Yeah, no, that's not too far off. When people ask me where I'm from, what I say now is, you know where Hershey is? You ever heard of Hershey chocolate? They're like, yeah. I'm like, all right, go 20 minutes east of there. That's where I'm at.
That's actually a perfect description.
I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, yeah, like Hershey is not at all like Philadelphia or Pittsburgh.
Oh no.
But like they know the brand because of the chocolate. So Paul, I want to ask you, what has been, we've had some really fun and insightful, side conversations and back and forth. But if you could tell me that the one thing you've learned in Schiffbauer Consulting Group so far in your 6 years, what's like been the theme? Like what's been like the one nugget? Like if you go back to yourself when you were freelancing all the way back when you started and tell yourself something you learned today, what would you say?
I would definitely say, and it's kind of a mantra adopted amongst my core team, winning is not an event. It is a process where like you have a series of wins or that look like events. To those who might not know what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, but it is a process where you need daily activity to, accomplish those short and long-term goals. It will not happen overnight. If something happens that seems like eventual, it's putting in a number of items, knocking them out, having some strategy in place to accomplish that end goal. I will say though, because it is
You've answered that question before.
Yeah, I have. But I will say I'll add it because it's the beginning of the year. It's January.
Yeah.
And this applies any time of the year, but I'm seeing too much bullshit out there where people saying they hope they have a good year or they can't wait for things to change in their personal life or professional life. This applies in business and life. When people say hope, it is not a strategy.
Yeah, what are you going to change? Things don't change unless you do.
No, that is something I've also adopted. I think it's really resonated at the beginning of the year where you hope for something, but what are the steps and actions you're going to take and execute to get that end goal rather than this hoping for the best.
Yeah. You can have hope, but you better have actions to justify it.
Yeah. No, having good vibes and, seeing it through and being optimistic is great, but that's not going to pay your bills.
Amen to that, man. That's the truth. Well, Paul, let me ask you, where can people find you, connect? What's the best place for people to get a hold of you?
The best way to connect to me, and just look up Paul Schiffbauer on Facebook, LinkedIn, on all major accounts, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. I have a handle. It's Young Marketer, and it's Young YUNG, like one of those like early like 2000s Dirty South rappers.
Young Jock,
like
Young Cheesy.
Yes. That's a great way to connect with me online. Other than that, just hit me up. We'll go get a steak sometime.
See you Monday at the White Rose.
Yeah, we'll have a good time.
Cool, man. Well, hey, thanks for everybody for listening. If you enjoyed this show and if you're listening and you want to be a guest, reach out. And if you enjoyed the show, share it with a friend. I don't advertise for anything else. My only call to action right now is to keep spreading the awareness. Thanks so much.